Tropical storm Isaias has sparked potentially life-threatening flash flooding in Puerto Rico. China has urged the United States to abandon its Cold War mentality and to promote bilateral military ties. The World Health Organization warned on Thursday that Africa is likely to have higher figures of coronavirus cases than the official numbers due to a lack of testing. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. Tropical storm Isaias brought heavy rains and gusty winds to Puerto Rico, mainly in the southwest of the island. In an 11 a.m. bulletin this Thursday, the National Hurricane Center, based in the U.S. state of Florida, informed that the system was already moving away from the island and affecting neighboring Dominican Republic. This is the 9th named storm system of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. It's expected to pass over the Dominican Republic and Haiti on Thursday and hit southeastern Bahamas by early Friday. The storm resulted in potentially life-threatening flash flooding in Puerto Rico and reportedly knocked out power for hundreds of thousands of residents. The Second Commission of the Senate of Colombia this Tuesday approved the promotion of 6 officials of the armed forces, despite strong criticism from social movements who allege the figures are linked to human rights violations. Among those promoted is General Enrique Zapatero, accused of being involved in corruption and the disappearance of citizen Jaime Quintero. Senators Ivan Cepeda, Antonio Sanguino and Feliciano Valencia expressed their disagreement with the promotions and withdrew from the session. At least 16 generals and more than 230 officers are accused of corruption, leading opposition forces to request the suspension of the promotion process. And Colombian authorities have captured a renowned drug trafficker and financer of the United Self-Defenses of Colombia paramilitary group. The National Police arrested Francisco Antonio Angulo Osorio, also known as El Piloto, at his home in the city of Medellin in the framework of Operation Temis. The Supreme Court of Justice, among other institutions, had issued 4 arrest warrants against the trafficker. El Piloto is accused of masterminding several massacres, including that of 1997 in Ituango.
Pacho El Piloto was wanted for aggravated homicide, conspiracy to commit crimes with paramilitary purposes, terrorism, and aggravated robbery. El Piloto would have relations with different former leaders of the self-defense forces of Colombia in the United States, such as Don Berna, Carlos and Vicente Castaño Gil, Cuco Banoy, and Salvatore Mancuso.
Cuba is strengthening its prevention protocols following an increase in COVID-19 cases in recent days. President Miguel Díaz-Canel informed of the decision after a meeting with the temporary task force for the prevention of COVID-19. Health authorities have reported 65 new cases in the last 72 hours. Of these, 58 were locally transmitted cases in the provinces of Havana and Artemisa. To date, Cuba has confirmed 2,597 coronavirus cases and registered a death toll of 87. In Brazil, health authorities have recorded nearly 1,600 COVID-19 deaths in the last 24 hours. The figure was reported on Wednesday by the Brazilian Ministry of Health. Brazil has now registered a total of over 2.5 million positive cases and over 90,000 deaths, making it the second hardest hit nation in the world with no sign of the epidemic slowing. As a worrying figure, it was reported that Brazil was home to 30% of the nurses killed by COVID-19 worldwide. Of this figure, 64% were women. And Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro removed his face mask as he greeted supporters on arrival at São Raimundo Airport before heading to inaugurate a waterworks in the state of Bahia as part of his first official trip following his reported recovery from COVID-19. Brazil has registered record daily numbers of infections and deaths in recent days, with over 70,000 new cases confirmed on Wednesday. Despite these figures, President Jair Bolsonaro has decided to reopen the country's borders and international airports to foreign tourism, ending a 4-month travel ban in hopes of reviving the badly hit tourism industry. Also in Brazil, First Lady Michelle Bolsonaro participated in an official event alongside the president and other government officials just a day before testing positive for COVID-19. Moving on to Barbados, where the Minister of Health and Wellness has stated he's satisfied that the necessary travel protocols are currently in place and confirmed that the government will maintain the health measures indicated by the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners. To date, Barbados has reported a total of 110 coronavirus cases and 7 fatalities.
A random or ad hoc operation. We're not being reckless. This is being very carefully and meticulously planned and executed. And we have different measures in place and different steps to be able to capture persons coming into the country. Is the system 100% perfect? No. No. But I'll tell you what, we're going to give it 100% to make sure that we capture all persons coming into the country. And it has been working very well so far, so that although I have heard what Bampo said, at the end of the day, we have to balance this situation. We are fighting a pandemic, yes, but there can be a greater pandemic of sorts if at the end of the day, the social and economic implications for the vast majority of Barbadians, if we do not also deal with that. And so we depend on visitors coming into the country. That is true.
The Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association is calling on the Ministry of Education to close primary schools across the nation following a spike in COVID-19 infections. A press release issued by the organisation's president on Wednesday noted that the surge in cases poses a risk to students, teachers and principals engaged in preparatory classes for the national exam to be held on August 20th. At least 3 primary schools have been closed for cleaning after 1 student contracted the virus and another 2 were said to be in contact with infected people. Trinidad and Tobago has registered more than 150 COVID-19 cases and 8 fatalities.
For the psychological and emotional relief of completing their...
And we'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Speaking at a press conference in Beijing on Thursday, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of National Defense stressed that the United States should abandon its Cold War mentality and work to promote bilateral military ties with China.
It has long been a well-known fact that the United States takes an approach to the international rules in which it only uses those in its favor, but discards those not to their liking, and it plays up unilateral bullying hegemony under the banner of America First. Unlike the United States that has constantly pulled out from organizations and scrapped agreements, China joined the Armed Trade Treaty on the very day the US withdrew from the World Health Organization, fulfilling its international responsibilities and obligations with concrete actions. In the recent time, the US side has constantly expanded its military ties with Taiwan region, promoting arms sales to Taiwan, hyping up the US and Taiwan joint trainings, which has sent a seriously mistaken signal to the Democratic Progressive Party administration. We hope that the US side will abandon the Cold War mentality and zero-sum game mindset, but view the bilateral relations between the 2 countries and 2 armies of China and the United States rationally. Stop making negative comments and taking negative actions, but do some meaningful things to promote the relations between the 2 countries and 2 armies and safeguard the common interests of both sides.
And Beijing also criticised Washington for considering a ban on Chinese video sharing app TikTok in the US.
The US presumption of guilt and threats against the Chinese company without any evidence as exposed is hypocrisy and run counter to its commitment in maintaining fairness and freedom, which also violates the World Trade Organization principles of openness, transparency, and non-discrimination. It is not conducive to the interests of the American people and businesses. The reason why the US spared no efforts to suppress the relevant Chinese company by all means is not because of national security, democracy and freedom, or fairness and reciprocity. The real reason is that these companies are Chinese companies and the front runners in their industries.
The number of coronavirus cases recorded worldwide has now surpassed 17.3 million. According to official figures, the pandemic is accelerating, with more than 1 million new infections detected in the past 4 days. The United States remains the worst-hit country, with more than 4.6 million cases and a death toll of nearly 155,000. It's followed by Brazil with more than 2.5 million cases and India with over 1.6 million. The global death toll stands at over 673,000. US President Donald Trump on Thursday suggested delaying the 2020 presidential elections, citing the coronavirus pandemic. Trump said delaying the election would allow people to vote properly, securely and safely, claiming that with universal mailing voting, 2020 would be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history and a great embarrassment to the US. The proposal comes as the president continues to lag behind in the polls, faced with his main rival, Joe Biden. Only Congress can change the election date, which is set by law on November 3rd. With Democrats ruling the lower house, that is highly unlikely to happen. And protesters continue to gather in front of a Portland courthouse this Thursday after the governor of Oregon State announced that U.S. federal forces would start their phased withdrawal from the city on Thursday. After more than 60 nights of uninterrupted protests and clashes, President Donald Trump's administration agreed to the withdrawal of federal forces whose presence was seen as an occupying paramilitary force. However, Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf indicated that the officers will only withdraw if there are guarantees that local police can ensure the security of the federal courthouse. On Thursday, the US National Space Agency launched its most elaborate life-hunting Mars rover yet from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The launch of the rover, named Perseverance, was the world's third and final Mars launch of the summer. It follows China's rover orbiter and a United Arab Emirates orbiter, both launched last week. The three spacecraft will take about 7 months to reach Mars after travelling 300 million miles. Perseverance will drill down into the surface of the red planet, seeking evidence of past microscopic life in an ancient lakebed. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson claimed on Thursday that the UK has achieved massive success in reducing the number of coronavirus-related deaths. The claims came after European analysis revealed that England has recorded the highest level of COVID-19 deaths in Europe.
This country has had a massive success now in reducing the numbers of those tragic deaths, and we've got it at the moment under some measure of control. The numbers of deaths are well down. But I have to tell you that we're looking at a resurgence of the virus in some other European countries. You can see what's been happening in the United States. And so it is absolutely vital as a country that we continue to keep our focus and our discipline, and that we don't delude ourselves that somehow we're out of the woods or that this is all over, because it isn't all over.
In Bosnia and Herzegovina, the town of Mostar registered temperatures of 105 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade on Thursday, marking the hottest day of the year. Residents are used to the summer heat, but only a few dared to leave their homes and cool down in a local river. Mostar usually attracts thousands of visitors every year, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, streets and hotels remain empty. According to local media, the pandemic has devastated the economy as the majority of the population relies on tourism as their main source of income. Germany is experiencing a historic collapse of its gross domestic product. Even German economists did not predict such a major downturn. Most forecasts indicate that the GDP of Europe's leading economic power will fall by 9% in the second quarter of 2020. However, the Federal Statistics Office has confirmed that the country's economy shrank by an unprecedented 10.1% between April and June. This figure doubles the highest record of the previous financial and economic crisis in 2008. Authorities in the Vietnamese capital deployed rapid COVID-19 tests for 21,000 locals who travelled to Da Nang city in central Vietnam after more than 30 locally transmitted COVID-19 cases were confirmed there.
I want to ensure the health of myself and my family as well as the community. I want to be tested in order to contribute to the pandemic prevention. I think organizing the rapid testing is good for the community in order to prevent the virus from spreading, and we can detect positive cases earlier without letting them spread further. I think it is good.
Flooding in the South Korean city of Daejeon has damaged hundreds of homes after the city was battered by heavy rainfall early on Thursday morning. Firefighters had to use boats to evacuate residents living in flooded apartment buildings. According to local media, one person died of a heart attack after their home was flooded. Korean weather authorities said Thursday's rainfall was the fourth highest ever recorded in the city. Locals living in the remote Raja island of eastern Indonesia rescued a stranded short-finned pilot whale, while 10 others were found dead. The whales, ranging from 6 to 20 feet in length, were found in the remote province of East Nusa Tenggara. Footage showed a group of around 10 men struggling to push the surviving animal, which was scarred with deep cuts, back into the ocean. They eventually managed to do so, and the whale appeared to swim off by itself, prompting loud cheers. Short-fin pilots are highly social animals and are often involved in mass strandings, although scientists are still unclear as to why. And we have more news coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The World Health Organization warned on Thursday that Africa is likely to have higher figures of coronavirus infections than the official numbers, as there is a lack of testing.
Get the testing up in African countries. We need to increase the testing, and we'll be convinced that we are seeing the correct situation when we see high rates of testing with the positivity at around 5%. This is the case now in relatively few countries, so there's still a lot of work to do to scale up the testing and appreciate the true situation. So conclusion, yes, there is some underestimation. We have seen that in a number of countries that have increased testing, but as we keep saying, we do not think there is a hugely underestimated situation, and we particularly don't think there are, thousands of people dying on the continent undetected. Testing has been one of the biggest challenges that African countries have faced because of the poor availability of testing kits on the global market. This is something we're working very hard with the Africa CDC and other partners to help our countries to have access to.
The Director General of the World Health Organization has warned that spikes in coronavirus cases in a number of countries are being driven by young people.
Are at risk too. One of the challenges we face is convincing younger people of this risk. Evidence suggested that spikes of cases in some countries are being driven in part by younger people letting down their guard during the Northern Hemisphere summer. We have said it before, and we will say it again. Young people are not invincible. Young people can be infected. Young people can die. And young people can transmit the virus to others.
The Economic Community of Central African States held a video conference of heads of state and government this Thursday. Prior to the high-level conference, the Community's Council of Ministers analysed the reports of the Secretary-General and the Consulting Commission on Monday, as well as the financial contributions of member states and the proposals of candidates for the different positions within the bloc. The ECCAS groups Angola, Burundi, Cameroon, Chad, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Central African Republic, Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda and Sao Tome and Principe. Mohamed Dicko, the influential Muslim leader seen as the driving force behind Mali's protest movement, has said the country's political crisis could be resolved without the president stepping down. The statements from Dicko mark a more moderate position than that expressed by other opposition leaders. For weeks, President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta has been locked in a tense standoff with a wide-ranging opposition alliance that has staged mass demonstrations calling for his resignation amid growing anger over perceived corruption. The crisis has raised concerns regarding further instability in a country at the heart of the fight against armed groups in West Africa's Sahel region, prompting mediation efforts by regional leaders, which have so far been unsuccessful. The death toll from monsoon floods across South Asia has increased to more than 300 over recent weeks. The torrential downpours across the densely populated region are critical to replenishing rivers and groundwater, but also cause widespread death and destruction. In India's poorest state of Bihar, home to 125 million people, 11 people have been killed and at least 4 million have been affected by the heavy rains, with homes and villages damaged. More than 300,000 villagers were evacuated in the state, which has a fragile healthcare system and has recorded more than 46,000 COVID-19 cases. On Thursday, Muslim pilgrims climbed Saudi Arabia's Mount Arafat to pray as part of the climax of this year's Hajj. A tight security cordon was established around the foot of the rocky hill outside Mecca, also known as the Mount of Mercy. Pilgrims wore face masks and observed social distancing as Saudi authorities enforced tough restrictions to prevent a coronavirus outbreak. Sprayed with water sprinklers to beat the desert heat, the pilgrims raised their palms skywards as they climbed the slopes of the hill where Muslims believe that Prophet Muhammad gave his last sermon. A Ugandan court has sentenced a poacher to 11 years in prison for killing a rare endangered mountain gorilla. Rafiki, a 25-year-old silverback who was the head of a gorilla group in the southwestern Bwindi Forest National Park, was killed with a spear in early June. The UNESCO World Heritage Site near Uganda's border with the Democratic Republic of the Congo is home to about half of the world's remaining mountain gorilla population of roughly 1,000. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
为了保持身体健康